Tonight on Signals Music Live, what is the rock scale? How do you resolve tension? And, more importantly, who makes the greatest guitar pedal? Well, I don't know the answer to that last one, but I'll try to give you my best advice. Hello, everybody. I see Key of D Music, Nicholas Peshman, welcome, and PF Darkside. Can you all confirm that everything sounds all right? YouTube is giving me a warning that my audio bitrate is 0. That doesn't sound good. So if I can all get like a thumbs up and just let me know that everything looks all right and sounds okay, that would be fantastic. I would appreciate it. But we're going to dive right into things. We're going to have plenty of time for live questions here at the end. But I do appreciate the questions that were asked, and I'm looking forward to answering them. And it looks like everybody says they can hear me. That's great. So YouTube is lying to me. The first comment here is going to come from Michael Varney, who I believe is already here in the chat. So welcome to Michael. And he wanted he had personally contacted me about a Dorian jam, but I figured we would go through it here as well. So this is Michael Varney asking me to roast him. Well, I'm not here to roast people, Michael. Hopefully I can give you some constructive criticism. All right, that'll be the goal here today. So let's take a listen to Michael Varney playing around with the Dorian scale. And we'll kind of fast forward here to where things kind of get active. And this chord progression is a D minor to a G major, which is the heart of Dorian. And I think, Michael, I think you're killing it. I think you're doing a really good job. I know you add some chromatics in here. Let's listen for it. I think right here. Awesome. You know, as soon as those chromatics come in, they stick out to me. This is the great thing about adding passing tones and learning your blues scales and your bebop scales, is it provides you that chromatic interest. And I'm telling you, even if you don't have a trained ear, you know, subconsciously, that's what people like about stuff. They like that little note that sounds a little different. You know, we're so used to hearing 5 notes from the pentatonic scale or 7 notes from a scale. All of a sudden you throw in an 8th note that hasn't occurred in an entire minute. That makes a difference. That makes a subconscious difference on us. So here's what I'll do. I'll give you a little bit of constructive criticism. What can you do next time to improve your Dorian jam? Well, there's 2 simple things I think you could do. I found the jam track that you have gone over, Michael Varney, and that is from U-Jam. It is U-Jam. It is a D Dorian backing track. And if we listen to this, I'm going to plug into a wet tone. And here's the first thing I'd like you to try thinking about. And of course, this doesn't apply just to guitar players. This is for anybody who wants to improvise in Dorian or any scale. This is just a simple lead idea that I didn't hear you execute, that I would like to hear you execute. And this might sound a little strange, but I want you to be more predictable sometimes, Michael. This is like the worst advice you should normally you should back away when somebody says be more predictable. But honestly, I would like to hear more things you're setting up for us. And I think the simplest way to talk about this is scale patterns, all right? Think I take a scale. That seems pretty loud. So I'm going to back this off a little bit. We'll take the scale, and we're in D Dorian, all right? So I'll just... All right, I'll use this kind of pentatonic minor shape and using that with a little bit of the natural 6th in there. But what I would like you to do is try to consult some scale patterns, like maybe going down 3 notes. Now start back up a note and come down 3 notes. And then back, and then back. All right, so I'm going to try to apply that here, and let me know if the mix is all right, too, because I think my mix is a little wonky. Things are really loud in my ear, so if I'm too loud, if the guitar's too loud, if the jam track is too loud, just let me know in the chat here. But I'll try to demonstrate this idea of using a pattern of 3s so you know what's going to happen next. So you will actually be able to predict, oh, I can guess what's going to happen next, but then I'll break that pattern and hopefully do something tasty. And a few more changes here. You know, 1 second. I can already tell my audio is bugging out just a little bit. I'm going to have to settle for a little bit of latency to get this working correctly. I'll try this again. You hear that? The whole way through, right? You knew where I was going with it. I was predicting, oh, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But I can change that, and I can make that interesting, and I can finish it off with something totally different. And then back down. Very predictable. Something that's not predictable. Back to predictability. Scale patterns, right? Now I'm just doing 3s, right? Let's do a simpler pattern, just 2s, all right? Let's listen to like a pattern of 2, like... And then do it again. So that would be the idea I'm having. I'm just jamming at this point. Sorry, I don't want to spend these live streams just jamming out for you guys. But there's one other thing I wanted you to think about, Michael Varney. That's the first one. Introduce scale patterns to your playing. 4s and 3s are the really, really easy ones. But the other thing I want you to do is think about being a rhythm guitar player while you're playing lead. This is only a 2-chord jam. We're playing a D minor 7 and a G. So let's forget about single notes and let's think about what the rhythm player might be playing. They might be playing a full D minor chord. They might be playing a full G major chord like this. And what I want to do is just kind of riff on those chords. I kind of want to get more groovy, more like, more of a rhythm playing. And it's going to be like, where'd the lead go? Well, there is no lead. I'm just jamming. I'm in the pocket now. So I'm going to do that by thinking of a D minor chord here. And I'm not going to even use this note because it's too high. I want to try to kind of move all of our range low, right? Lead is for high stuff most of the time. We're gonna stay real low, real down and muddy, all right? That way, when we come back out of the mud, it'll be nice and bright. So listen, I think this is just an easy thing to start doing, all right? Because you already know these chords. Chords are way easier than lead, in my opinion. So let's check it out. D minor, I'm just gonna be like, and I'll start with lead first, so you hear where I'm going. So here's my lead. But then, here's a G. I'm outlining the chords, but I'm not really playing lead. But now I will play lead. Right? And it's like, oh, how refreshing is that? Right? So that's the idea, is you're not just lead. More lead. Like, that's cool. I get it. I'm a guitar player. I know how intoxicating that is and how alluring and how hypnotic it can be to just keep playing leads. But you know what? Sit back a little bit and just kind of play with the groove, play with the jam, supplement your bass player, supplement your keyboard player, and that way when you come back out of that, mud or out of that jam, you've just got the shining lead, and it's gonna have more currency. The things you say in your solo are gonna mean more because it's like, oh, here comes my solo. We can get immune to it. So I think these are two very, very, very simple and practical concepts that you can start applying to your leads. And I'm so glad you threw that in there, Michael Varney, because I hope this is a lesson to everybody. I think this is really, really important stuff. And just by, you providing your, being brave enough to provide an example of improvising, because I know how scary it is to show everybody, hey, I just improvised this. So once again, I commend you for sharing it, and thank you for sharing it, because it let me rant like this for 10 minutes on two very simple concepts. I don't think anything I did was hard, okay? I don't think it was hard to play. The fast patterns are hard. Yeah, if you want me to do something like, okay, I'm out of practice, so I probably won't be able to do this, but like a 4-note pattern, like, you get the idea. would be a 4-note pattern. If you're Eric Johnson, you can do the 5-note patterns, and you'll sound like Eric Johnson. Nobody else sounds like Eric Johnson because nobody else does 5-note patterns. So thank you so much for that question, Michael Varney, and I hope that helps. So we are going to move on to another excellent set of questions. This time it's coming from Aaron Sheeman, who provided a wonderful set of chords for us a few weeks ago. Aaron's question is as follows. I've analyzed a bunch of songs. I've come across a pattern. I wonder if you have a name for it. The best name for it seems to be the key of rock. And Aaron, I actually agree. The tonic will be a major chord, and the rest of the chords will be from the parallel minor mode. Exactly. The rest of the major chords, basically, is what he's saying. So let's go through this. In the key of E, for example, we'd have an E, a G, and actually, let me switch to something a little less loud, like that. So we've got E, G, A, B, C, D, and E. And actually, you know what? All of these guitar effects that I have are very, very reverby. Let me do one that's not so reverby right now. So let me do this instead. Something just basic. There we go, that's better. So here's the idea, all right? I do think that this is the key of rock. I think this is a very, very, very popular trope that's been going on, I think, heavily since the 90s. In my opinion, it seemed to really take off in the 90s. I could be wrong on that. But the idea is, you know, think about any tonic like E. What are the 3 major chords in the key of E? Well, you have E, A, B. Great. Let's think of the relative minor, okay? The relative minor is C sharp minor, right? What are all of, or I'm sorry, the parallel minor, sorry. If we look at the parallel minor of E minor, what are the major chords in the parallel minor of E minor? We have G major, we have C major, and we have D major. You know what? Instead of me talking through this, because it gets so confusing when I talk and when I'm wrong, let me just write it out, all right? E major has E, A, and B, right? That's the 1, 4, 5. That's 1, 4, 5. E minor has a D major. That's the flat 7. We'll go through them in order. The major chords are going to be G major. That's the flat 3. And then you also have the flat 6 chord, which is going to be a C major. And you have the flat 7 chord, which is there. So that's the flat 3, that's the flat 6, and that's the flat 7. All right? So basically what we have now is we have 6 chords. 6 chords that fit together in a magical way. E major, and let's do them in order now, all right? If we put them in order, we have E, G, A, B, C, D, and E. All right? And you hear this stuff all the time. The first song I'm thinking of is a song by 7 Mary 3 called Cumbersome. I'll stay in E just for this, but it's like a... And that whole song is just those chords. I have become cumbersome to this world. And this is like 90s alternative rock. Take a major chord and slide it around. If we want to be theoretical about it, we'd call it parallelism. Because what are we doing? We're taking one major chord and we're sliding it all around the place, okay? So the other way you can think about this is as like a perpetual Picardy third, right? We keep borrowing, we're in a minor key, but we keep like coming back to a major chord, and then we're borrowing some other weird chords. Like if I was in E minor, then obviously G major's allowed. Obviously A could be thought of as being brought in from Dorian. B is my dominant chord. C is the natural 6th chord. D is there, but we keep resolving to E major. This was really popular. Creed, Stone Temple Pilots, you would hear this stuff all the time, where it's like we're almost 100% in minor with one giant exception. Our tonic chord. Our tonic is major, and everything else comes from the parallel minor. It's really weird. I mean, it doesn't sound really weird, right? You listen to it, it just rocks out. So I think the reason for that, if I had to guess, it's, you know, major's a little bright. You know, minor's cool. Nobody wants to write like cool rock songs in major, right? People want to be edgy and like angsty, and that's what minor's all about. So you get that when you're just saturated with all the harmonies of minor, all the chords of minor, but this major upbeat beat tonic, you know, this major chord for your one chord kind of like erases a little bit of that. So, Aaron, you're definitely onto something. Now, does it have an official name others outside of the key of rock? I don't think so. I mean, if you guys can find out the name of this, I would be, if there's an actual name past what I've talked about, just parallelism of major, and then what you've already discovered that we're using the major chords from the parallel mode, the parallel minor, I don't really know any other to call it, but I think it's a great thing to experiment with. This is the same way I wrote my Bad Country song. My pickup truck is my best friend, gonna stick with me till the bitter end. And then you know what people commented in that video? People said, oh, this sounds like Warrant's Cherry Pie. And you know what? I didn't realize it at the time, but she's my cherry pie, tall drink of water, making it's basically the same set of chords. So yeah, I guess I did rip off Warrant's Cherry Pie. I had no idea I did it. I don't think it's a ripoff, but it's very similar. Okay, if you really go through those, that's, you know, people called it out and they're 100% right. So, all right, Aaron has another part to his question, and that part is regarding Jay Gomer's chord progression, who I'm assuming is lurking around in the chat. Jay Gomer's usually around here. Yeah, these right there, Tau02. So, last time, Jay brought in this awesome progression that was reminding me of James Bond. It reminded some other folks in the chat of James Bond. But Aaron brought up the other reminiscent thing here, that it sounds like Call of Cthulhu. That was the riff from Metallica's Call of Cthulhu, which is, you know, Hangar 18, basically the same song. I think there's some myth and legend there. You know, Dave Mustaine wrote the riff and then Metallica stole it and then they recorded it. I don't know. I really don't care. Either way, here's what is important. Aaron, the way you're notating this, I think is correct. And I don't think you're wrong, but I would actually probably write that differently. And here's why I would probably write it differently. And I want to play with this for a little bit because basically, Aaron's question was, what's going on here? It seems like it's just a bunch of upward direction voice leading that builds more and more tension. And I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to say absolutely that's what's going on here. But I want you to pay attention to an important thing. D minor 6 technically should include an A note. And at this point in time in the song, in all of these examples, we're ditching the A note altogether. So I don't think we should call this chord right here. This chord right here, if we look at the notes, well, we have a D. And then what I have is I have a B diminished triad, B, D, F. There's no A note present. If there was an A note present, I think it would radically alter the way this chord feels. I think it would really brighten up this chord. So I think that, you know, I like calling it a D minor 6 because then it shows me, hey, everything's happening over D here. But you know what? I wouldn't call it a D minor 6. What I would call it is a B diminished over D. Right? Here's B diminished, and it's over D. Yes, if the A was in there, I'd call it an A minor 6. Now, what's going on here? Well, in D minor, we have an A note. In B flat slash D, that A note just gets lifted up for chromatically, and then it lifts up again to get to the note B. That's part of this chord right here, D minor 6, or the B diminished slash D. And then finally, a version of D minor 7 that has this note C on it. So throughout this chord progression, you're hearing A, B flat, B, C, all the way through the same chord progression. Right? So yeah, that's just a voice leading upward. Now, what I want you to think about is let's do it with a major chord instead. If it works with minor, shouldn't it work with major? Yes, that's how voice leading works. Let's start with a D major triad. Okay, let's kind of reset our mind a little bit because we've been in D minor for quite a while. So let's see. All right. So now we're in D major, all right? Let's augment the fifth. Now we get a D augmented chord. The A goes up to B flat. That might sound really uncomfortable to you all, but it could take us to pretty much any chord that keeps moving up. So A sharp, B. What's a chord with B in it? Well, how about B minor? All right, so we've got D augmented, B minor slash D, and then maybe we could do like an A major at the end. Just a regular A. All right, let's finger pick this instead. D major, D augmented, B minor over D, and then we could still do that D minor 7. I wouldn't think of it as a D minor 7 so much anymore. But you can hear it's still doing the same thing, right? It's pulling us upward. What's another chord we could do there? Let's experiment for a bit. What's another chord that has this B in it right here? Well, B major, I don't want to do that. How about E minor? Maybe we could do an E minor. That works, right? D major, D augmented, E minor, and then maybe A, right? Right? So same kind of idea. We're just using the voice leading to get us to new chords, but we're pedaling over one note. I think that's what's really important here, is the D stays on the bass. And when we do that, we get these nice intervals, root and fifth, root and flat sixth, root and flat major sixth, root and flat 7. That's a cool... That's neat, right? You could continue it and find a chord that includes the major 7, but they don't. They just stop right there. Also, very, very important thing to keep in mind later on in Call of Cthulhu, or earlier on, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure there's a riff that goes like this. Which is a totally different key, but hopefully you can hear that it's based off of the same motion. If I tried to turn that into like an actual chord progression, what I'd get is A minor, oops, ugh. A minor, and then F over A, or if we want to think of it, yeah, F over A, and then that diminished triad over A, and then a G chord, an inverted G chord. So it's the same thing. Basically what I'm trying to say is that Metallica took that same chord progression that we just examined, this chord progression of D minor, B flat slash D, D minor 6, I'm not going to call it that, but you get the idea. This idea just gets modulated to A later on in the song. It just becomes riffified. It's essentially the same movement. And then you can hear it throughout the lead. So very, very cool stuff. I hope that answers your question. Basically what I'm saying is, Aaron, you're right. Yeah, it's voice leading. Experiment with it, though. That's the important thing. Play with it and see where else it takes you, because it could take you to a lot of really cool places. All right? Now, last part. Is there a reason I use Ableton and Reason? Is it just familiarity for me? Could you do it all in Reason? Here's my answer, Aaron. I use Ableton and Reason because I'm stubborn now. Ultimately, here's what happened. Reason and Ableton have removed the ability for rewire. The two programs no longer work with each other in their newest versions. So if I get the newest version of Ableton and the newest version of Reason, I can no longer use them together, which means I have two choices. I can either live in the past and continue to use outdated software that will never be supported and struggle with that for the rest of my life, or I can learn to convert 100% to one of these programs. So what I am in the process of doing is learning Ableton as a replacement for Reason. Now, Reason still will have a place in my heart, just because what Reason is meant to do now is it's meant to be a plugin. So I use it as for the synthesizers and the effects and stuff like that. What I really enjoyed about Reason was using it as a DAW and programming MIDI in it, and I enjoyed that process. I was just very comfortable clicking in MIDI tracks. I just need to get comfortable with it in Ableton. So eventually, I will move all the way 100% over to Ableton. Right now, I'm not quite there. I still rely on Ableton just because I'm comfortable with it. That's what I grew up with. You know what I mean? That's what I was born into. So we're going to go to a much simpler question. Con George is saying, basic guide on picking fundamentals and pick grip. Guitar question. Watch out, everybody, but we'll keep this short. Don't worry. Basic guide on picking fundamentals. There's basically two schools of thought here, okay? And even if you don't play guitar, you should know this. There's the pinch, where you like physically pinch the pick, right? Like it's literally you're pinching it in your hand. That is the one school of thought. I don't do that. I'm more of the side pinch, all right? My pick literally rests on my finger. You see how it's just nice and balanced right there? And then I just put my thumb on top of it, basically, all right? That's kind of a overgeneralization, but really this is how I hold my guitar pick. It is completely on the side of my finger. That gives me more surface area to contact the pick. It gives me more control over that pick. I also use bigger picks. I use about 1 millimeter thick, because if you're doing lots of shredding or really fast playing, then a thicker pick doesn't, bend as much. And I usually use ones that are like a rounded triangle, a little bit bigger. That's just my preference. Pick grip, you don't want to be stressing yourself out, all right? You don't want any tension in your fingers or tension in your hand altogether. Ultimately, what you want is a relaxed playing style. I strongly recommend you learn to relax these fingers while you're playing. I played with a fist for many years, and I think it's a terrible idea. There are a few players out there that get away with it, where it looks like they're just punching their guitar. I don't think it's good. I think it gets in the way. So just practice. This is very hard. I remember how hard it is to just play your guitar with these fingers just relaxed. Look at these fingers. Look at how nice and just chilling they are. They're just chilling. If I just drop my hand by my side, that's what my fingers would naturally do, and that's what they're just doing there. All right? That's kind of what you want, is that natural bend there. This hand has a little, the thumb and the finger has a little tension because I got to hold on to the pick. So there needs to be a little tension there. So that's what I would say the fundamentals are. However, Congeorge, there's a million ways to do it. And I am not a technician, okay? I am not the most technically gifted or, specialized player. So depending on the style you are playing, like if you're a shred head, I really would consult some of the people that are way more into that, like Troy Grady, I think, right, from Breaking the Code, the guy that, basically invented or discovered slant picking. That's the kind of guy I would go to if you're more into the shred genres, because that's beyond my capabilities. I can't play like Yngwie, but Yngwie can play like Yngwie. And if you want to play like him, I'm pretty sure he's holding his pick a little different than me. Pretty sure if you look at him, he does a pinch. He doesn't do the side pinch. So that would be an important thing to keep in mind. So moving on forward, Val is just sending his thoughts, saying he's looking forward to it. Well, thank you, Val. Now, Nicholas, who definitely is in the chat, didn't really ask a question. So, Nicholas, there will definitely be time here today at the end of the chat if you would like to have another question. Now, I already see Thomas is asking a question in the chat. Since it is related to picking, I will answer it right now. But please save the questions for the end, because I just miss them in the middle of the stream. I'm too busy ranting at the camera, and I just forget all the questions. So I forget them, and I don't see them. So definitely save them for the end. But Thomas is asking about planting a finger on the strumming hand on the pickguard. I often find myself doing that. For the most part, I really recommend you do not plant a finger. I think it's a very bad idea to anchor your finger on your guitar. This is notoriously a bad habit. I say don't do it. What is okay is contact with your guitar. What happens to me, it's going to be hard for you all to see this, but I have fingernails on this hand because I play fingerstyle guitar, so I have just enough fingernail to get a hold of the string there. And you can see fingernail scratches all over this part of my guitar, this part of my pickguard, because naturally when I play, my fingers are just resting right there and scraping. Maybe from this angle you can see it a little bit. You see that? And there's actually a benefit to doing this. If you can just let your fingers glide like that, then I can modulate the distance of my pick by kind of extending my fingers a little bit. I don't actually actively do this, but, these little micro movements kind of keep my pick really close to the strings or just a little bit farther away from the strings. So I don't think you should be anchoring your pick on an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar. I think it's a very, very bad habit. It limits your speed. It limits your mobility. There's very few moments where I would say it's acceptable. Very small passages where it might, but I would not recommend it as a general tool. But yeah, you'll see that kind of little contact with my pickguard, to me, is crucial. My technique relies on having contact with my pickguard. And I'm just kind of, here's the way I teach people how to tremolo pick. If you want to learn how to tremolo pick like this, if I asked you to hold your pick and scrape off a sticker on your guitar, imagine you had a sticker right there, like a Dole banana sticker, and some asshole just put it right there on your guitar and left it there for 3 days. Now you have to take it off. So you're getting your pick and you're doing this, right? Like, once you put your fingernails, the back of your fingernails on your guitar, you get like stability, right? And that is kind of where all of this tremolo picking comes from. And I'm not working hard. I'm really not. That's a fast tremolo pick, and I just feel like I'm scraping off the Dole banana sticker. So, and I wouldn't be able to do that if my hand was floating, I'll tell you that. I just lose the consistency. I have no stability. I can do it, but I know I can do it faster when I've got a little contact with my fretboard. So, excellent question, Thomas. But yeah, future questions, try to save them for the end, because I'm afraid I'm going to miss them. It's not I don't want to answer them, I just don't want to miss them, all right? So let's move on forward here. Bowtie's got a great question here. Do you think learning too many different skills isn't good? For example, I'm trying to learn many different styles of guitar: flamenco, progressive rock, metal, classical, acoustic, bass. Also, music production for vocals, singing, sound design, working on my own. I don't know if all my eggs in too many baskets. I want it all to come together so I can make my own stuff independently. Do you think it's too much? Bowtie, great question. I hope this isn't bad news, but you do have to pick and choose, for brief periods of your life. You do have to say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to conquer this. It's very easy to be like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to conquer this, and then halfway through be like, okay, I got good at that, and then move on to something else. I cannot stress the value of getting really good at one thing, okay? Specializing at one thing. I don't care what it is. You can be the best person at playing, tremolo picking. Be the best tremolo picker. Get really freaking good at it, but find one, because that process will kind of guide you through, and you're going to uncover a lot of value from getting good at one thing, whether it be, let's mention the things you said: flamenco guitar, progressive, rock, metal, a classical, acoustic. Stop with one of them. Just really try to focus to say, you know what? I'm going to spend the full year getting really good at classical acoustic guitar. And I'm not going to get distracted with all these other things. I'm going to spend a full year with, 80% of my practice time is getting good at this. I think there's an incredible amount of benefit at specializing at one thing. Then, once you've got a strength, you can rely on that strength, and you can supplement it with things that you're not so good at, right? Guitar is my strength. That's the only instrument that I'm good at. I'm not good at piano, but you know what? I've supplemented it with my music theory. So I can arrange things, and I've supplemented it with my engineering skills, right? I'll click things in like that. My voice, right? I sing a lot of things, and it's not the greatest vocal, in the world, but I've got enough singing experience and enough where I can get my vocals done, and I can send it to a singer. I can auto-tune my voice into a part for a female vocalist, and she knows what to sing. So, if I had said, oh, I'm going to learn singing and I'm going to learn violin, I know a kid, I don't want to pick on this person, but I know a kid that literally told me, oh, I'm signing up for violin lessons, and I'm buying a violin so I can record my own violin parts. I say kid, he's like 25, all right? Now, that's a noble goal, okay? I really sincerely wish you success in your goal. But if your goal is to have violins on your song, you have chosen literally the hardest, most frustrating path to achieving your goal. There is no possible path that is more hard and frustrating than saying, I think the only thing you can do is I'm going to also build my own violin. Okay, congratulations, you've made it even harder, all right? But it's 2022, all right? You can remotely hire a violin player, or you could, hang out at the music shop and find one, or you could program in your fake violin, or you could hire somebody on Fiverr to do your violin. So I think some people make it really, really hard for themselves because there's some sort of well, I don't want to discourage people from their noble goals, so don't get me wrong. If you're having fun with it, go have fun with it. But Bowtie, you seem to be having a little bit more serious aspect on this. So what I would encourage you to do is specialize in one or two things, but spread yourself thin in many different sections. I know a little bit about Indian music. I know a little bit about classical music. I know a little bit about jazz. I'm not an expert at any of those things. I'm really not, but I know just enough to fake it. I know just enough to, utilize it when I need. And I know just enough where if I get confused, I can comfortably approach something and learn about it. If I get confused about counterpoint, which I don't know, I know I'm a good enough musician where I could examine a counterpoint section and I could learn about the principles that make it up. And I don't have to go to school for that for 4 years to understand a measure of music. I can use my tools. So I can't really answer your question, Bowtie. I guess the only advice I would encourage you to do is really try to make a few pillars in your musical career. I will get really, really freaking good at blank and blank. And you know what? I'm just not going to be the greatest at blank, 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 blank. I'll be all right. I'll be adept. You know what I mean? But I won't be professional at it. So if you find yourself not being at a professional level at anything yet, which is all right. We can all, I still feel like I'm at that point sometimes. But if you feel like you're not a professional in any of those levels, then just pick one and say, this is going to be my main squeeze. This is going to be my main job here for a little while. Okay, that's how I would encourage you to try to go about that process. All right. So great question, though. Very, very, very important question. Now, Jay Gomer, always asking great questions. And then, Jay, I can't answer this one, man. I just can't. It would be malpractice. It would be medical malpractice for me to tell you how to fix the intonation on your guitar. But basically, it's an intonation issue. I would listen to Swapnil because Swapnil is an amateur luthier. And anybody who has built a few guitars knows far more on this topic than I do. But long story short, just so you all know, Jay is having a problem, which a lot of people don't know exists. But your guitar will never be in tune. It'll never be perfectly in tune. And depending on its setups, it might be really out of tune. Some guitars, when they get a little wonky with the, what's here and what's there, sometimes you get this effect where the octaves aren't even right. So like here's a G. And technically, this should be a G. And actually, let's see here. Let's see what my tuner says. How close is my G here? Pretty close. A little flat. Now, let's play the 12th fret above it. Let's see if it still says G. Yeah, pretty close. It's a little flatter, right? Ah, that means my intonation is off. So let's tune this up to a perfect G. That's perfect, right? So theoretically, when I play my 12th fret, shouldn't I get another perfect G? It's a little flat. Now, it's not that bad. My intonation isn't terrible, but it seems like Jay is having a little bit bigger of a problem, and that means adjusting these doohickeys, and it means maybe adjusting those doohickeys with some shaving or something like that. It usually involves probably not a truss rod adjustment, but it's usually all the stuff down there. Jay, I can't help you, man. I honestly just take my guitar to somebody that can fix it because, I bought the tools for it one time, and I got all motivated. I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn to fix my own guitar. I'm going to learn to luthier and... what did we just talk about? You can't get good at everything. I could be a really bad luthier. Sounds really exciting, right? Or I could just give it to my friend who fixes guitars for me. You know what I mean? And, some people are more passionate about other hobbies than other. Obviously, some people are going to be really drawn and, into the hand-working part of guitars. I admire those people. I'm just not one of them. So instead of just becoming a bad luthier and adding it to my list of skills that I'm only a little bit good at, I decide just not even pursue it. I've honestly made it a point, don't pursue it anymore. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jay. I usually love answering your questions. I'm just sad that I can't give you any insight on this one. But do check the comments. You've got some good responses on there. So our next question is from Velvet Steel. Can you give an update on the course you are working on and maybe a preview of what will be in it? I love your courses even more than your YouTube videos. They're the best music courses I have ever taken. Thank you so much, Velvet Steel. I'm so glad you said that they're the best music course I've ever taken. That's what I tried to make them as. I literally tried to make them as the best thing ever for the topic. That's what I'm trying to do with my current project, which is a book on chords and chord progressions. Update on it. Well, I just finished, 11 pages on the diminished seventh chord, 11 dense pages on the diminished seventh chord, and now I can move on to the next topic. But basically, here's the idea. When you pick up this book, it's going to be for beginners or for advanced musicians. I'm sure the advanced musicians can skip a little bit of the stuff at the beginning, but we're going to walk you through the basics of intervals. We're going to walk you through the basics of triads, and then we're going to understand why do these triads work in the major scale, and what is the major scale? How does that stuff work? We're going to understand scale degrees. We're going to understand basic cadences and basic diatonic functions. Then you're going to learn about the minor scale and everything that comes along with it. Relativity, relative minor, relative modulations. Then, from there, we're going to start exploring seventh chords and how seventh chords fit into things. Dominant chords, dominant functions, the relationship between dominant chords and diminished chords. How to use diminished chords, the many ways to use diminished chords, the secondary leading tone chords, harmonic rider progressions. From there, you're going to be going into modal chord progressions, understanding everything about modal theory. It's going to go on and on and on. And then after that, basically every chord that we haven't gotten to along the way, because here's what's important. I could start off the book and be like, here's a cool chord. Okay, great. But the way this book is structured is that by the time I'm teaching you a chord like the minor sixth chord, as soon as you learn it, you're going to be like, I understand why this chord exists. I understand what I can do with it. I understand what its function is. I understand how it's related to these other chords. It's set up in a very specific way where you're never going to be learning chords you don't know how to use. And if you happen to be the crazy musician that wants to learn all the chords, then by the time you get to that last chapter, you're going to be able to understand how to use those chords when you get to them. I think that's the big deal. You know what I mean? And I understand not everybody's going to want to get to those last chapters. It's going to get pretty intense. For most musicians, half the book is going to be enough because half the book is major, minor, secondary dominance, little bit about diminished, and I think that's going to be enough for 99% of musicians. But if you want to get past that, then there's going to be a specific path to, and it took me legitimately decades to get there, and I think I can get it in one book. I really do think I can do it in one book because it's focused on just chords. It's focused on just one specific kind of thing. So I'm working on it to make it the best thing I can. And I hope it's the best product ever. When it's all done, just so you all know, my plan is to turn it into a free video course. So every chapter will be a video on YouTube. I'll make a YouTube channel just on its own. It won't be on Signals. I'll literally make a dedicated YouTube channel just for this. It'll be a free video course on every single chapter in that book. And then, you know, obviously in the video, it'll be like, well, if you like this video, you can get the book. All this information is in the book, and you don't have to, you know, you can sit it and, you know, read it on the plane instead of watching it on my, you know, on my phone or something like that. So that's the plan. So once the book is done, I will have another overwhelming amount of work to produce this all into a video thing. It's an insane amount of work. It means I can't really do other things. Well, I could, but I would go crazy. So I'm focusing on this. It means everything else is shut down, but I do believe when it's all said and done, I will have an excellent resource for people for the next 50 years. And I think it'll be relevant for 50 years. I really do think. So Nicholas is saving up for the songwriting class in the new book. Nicholas Peschman, please get a hold of me. If you can't afford the songwriting class, please email me, signalsmusicjake@gmail.com. Again, signalsmusicjake@gmail.com. I don't need people spending their hard-earned money if they can't afford it. Like if finances are an issue, I don't want you to do that. I can get you with a discount or hook you up with that. For the book, I'm going to put it out like as cheap as you all can get it. You know, for my Patreon supporters, I try to make sure that you're all taken care of. So you'll obviously get the digital versions for free. The physical versions, I will sell it to you at cost. So, you know, if it takes, you know, $10 plus shipping, plus printing, all that kind of stuff, then that's what I'll charge you all for it. And then for the general public, I'm planning on releasing it at like $40, $50. There might be a DVD or something like that, but really I'd like to just do it on YouTube for now. So that is the update on the book. I don't know when it'll be done, but I'm not going to rush it. I want it to be great. And I'm sorry that Signals isn't active, but hopefully these live streams and the little lessons here and there will, you know, make it all worth it in the meantime. Swapneil's asking, what is your guitar practice routine? Well, sadly, Swapneil, it doesn't exist. Sadly, I am not in the middle of a guitar practice routine. However, if I was in the middle, it would all be completely dependent on what are my current goals. I don't believe in practicing things just, I mean, unless if you're beginning the guitar, yeah, practice whatever your teacher gives you. But I think as you evolve, you need to really be locating, you know, what should you be focusing on, you know, specializing your practice. For example, let's say, right now, what am I practicing? It's not necessarily on my guitar, but it's chords. My whole life is chords right now. So studying more about different interpretations of chords and chord theory and the way other people interpret chord progressions and the way other people interpret the same concept that I'm reading. So that's my practice routine, is studying books like the Mark Levine Jazz Theory book, and making sure I'm not treading over too much ground that he's covered, and making sure that I'm, you know, all the things that don't make sense. Wikipedia music theory, crap like that. So it's more of study right now. But guitar practice, when I did have a routine, it was kind of more like, okay, 30 minutes, I'm going to do, you know, 10 minutes of, you know, this technique, 10 minutes of that technique, 10 minutes of this song. I would try to switch it up. You know, I'll do this arpeggio pattern until I get perfect at it. One other thing I'll just mention here, Swapneil, just back what I said to Bowtie French Fry, try to get perfect, try to really excel at one thing. You know, if it takes you a year to get good at a solo, that's fine. Spend a year mastering a guitar solo. But really get one thing that you're like, I'm going to get amazing at this, and I'll just get a little bit good at other things. That process is so helpful because it'll improve skills along the way that you wouldn't have gotten, you know, any other way by just dedicating yourself to it. So I do think it all depends, Swap. Now, I'm reluctant to give you a practice routine or even share mine right now because, like I said, I don't have one. But if you asked for one, and if you shared your goals along the way, I'd be happy to help you develop one. Now, Lozenge is asking about a song that he has written, and Lozenge has provided the chord progressions as well, and I want you all to take a listen to this, all right? It's some interesting moments in here for sure, but I'm gonna lecture Lozenge for a little bit. So I'm going to stop it right there. And basically, Lozenge's question was asking about a B section. He had mentioned the chords here, but here's where my lecturing begins. So Lozenge, well, first off, we're not in B minor, okay? Because I know right away, if we start off the beginning, we're getting a B minor chord. And then you've got like an E minor, but then all of a sudden you've got an A minor chord. And A minor is certainly not in the key of B minor, all right? And then we've got some other issues kind of floating around here, like this F sharp diminished chord really doesn't have any context. You're playing an F sharp diminished chord, and it doesn't, but then my next chord is B minor. and it doesn't really function like a diminished chord should. Remember, F sharp diminished should move us up to G, right? It should kind of give us that motion, F sharp to G, and it doesn't. We don't hear anything reminiscent to that. So I think what's happening, Lozenge, here's what I'm predicting, and I'm not just picking on you. I think you're having trouble writing a B section because you're not quite in a stable tonic. When I listen to your piece here, I'm hearing lots of cool moments, right? Listen. Cool moment. Cool moment. I'm a little confused. Oh, that's a cool moment. I'm a little confused. Cool moment. Cool moment. And now, right? Like, it's not cohesive to me as something simple, like a 4-chord loop or an 8-chord loop. It almost feels like, almost like a sentence where you took away the period in the middle, and now it's like 2 sentences combined into one. We don't have a stable tonic. Like, where is my home base? Which of these chords is supposed to be home? I don't know. Is that home? I don't feel it as home. If I skip any more part in the song, it's like I don't know which chord is my home base. And if you don't have a solid tonal center, it's going to be so hard to structure a song. You know, songs are all about tension and release and leaving your home base and coming back to your home base. But if we don't have like a solid home base, there shouldn't be a mystery why you're having trouble writing a B section. So here's what I would recommend you do. I would recommend you do your math over a little bit on figuring out the B minor scale. And maybe, like, I don't want you to change, like, there's cool moments in there, right? So I don't want you to change the cool moments, but I would recommend you just write something in a key. It's very disappointing advice. I know people don't want to be told, oh, keep it simple. But I want you to keep it simple. Make it a very simple, purely diatonic B minor section. Keep the groove, keep your patterns, right? Your ba-na-na-na. I like what you're doing, but let's simplify the harmony. And by that, I just mean simplify the chord progression. Once we've simplified the chord progression, I suspect you're going to find it's very easy to write a B section, because then you're going to be like, oh, you know what? I'm sick of hearing my tonic chord. I'm sick of, or I could play a trick on them. I could end on a different chord. So that would be my advice, Lozenge. It's tricky for me to give you an exact remedy for that. All right. And then Michael Varney did chime in here, suspecting that you've got some stuff going on in B Phrygian as well. Michael Varney, I think that, you know, like, your confusion might be similar to mine. It's hard to parse this, right? This is not, even from a theoretical position, it's hard to parse. On paper, it's hard to parse. And as I listen to it, it's hard to parse. So and there's nothing wrong with music that's like ambiguous. I like ambiguous music, but you do have to give them something to hold on to that's stable. And I feel like this is bordering on a little too unstable, a little too hard to wrap our heads around as something consistent. We'd have to listen to it multiple times till it's like, oh, I really see where that's going. So it's pretty complex, and I'd like you to just try simplifying it, Lozenge, and then I think we could have a really, really easy answer for you. I hope that's not a disappointing answer, all right? I hope it's not like I crushed your dreams of writing complex music, because complex music's fun, but it's much easier to write if you can write easy music first. You know, let's walk before we can run. I think that's good advice. Ray Sherry, in your opinion, what is the best effects pedal manufacturing company? Loves your videos. Thanks. Ray Sherry, thank you. I do not know, but I will say this. I will say that me personally, I have committed to only buy one effects pedal for the rest of my life. Well, at least for the near future. And that's the Line 6. I know they get a bad rep, but the Line 6 Helix. I did my homework. I've played a Helix. I love it. I'm the kind of person that wants to make stuff in my DAW. And then Line 6 now, you know, the Helix is just basically every amp simulator all combined together into one item, but they also have Helix Native, which is for your DAW. So I could basically make all my tones in Ableton, and then once I like them, I can export them to my pedal, and then I can use those tones live. So if I wrote a song in my DAW and love it, I can produce those exact same tones live because it's the same software you're using. That's pretty cool. Now, I currently don't play out a lot. I don't play in a band. I'm not doing a lot of gigs. I do maybe 2 gigs a year for charity shows or something like that. Like, I'm going to be playing with some older guys I'm part of a nonprofit organization called Free Guitars for Future Stars. Can you guess what we do? We give kids free guitars, and we teach them guitar lessons. So for that, we're doing a charity concert. We're going to do some music for them. I'll be playing for that. I'm going to use my Helix. I'm going to figure out my tones ahead of time, maybe in a DAW, and I'll just set it up there live. I don't have to ever buy a delay or it was an expensive pedal. It was the most expensive toy I've ever bought as a guitar player. I think it was about $1,100 maybe for the entire thing, which is a lot of money in my opinion. But you can spend $200 on a distortion pedal, and you can spend $200 on a delay, and you can spend $200 on a flange, and you can spend $200 on a looper pedal. I mean, God knows that's like on the cheap end of things sometimes. So I don't like doing that. I'm not a gear guy. I don't like collecting gear. I hate farting around with it. So I just want one pedal that I can haul and blah, blah, blah. I'm done. Here I go. Like, that's the kind of person I am. I know that it's not very fun. I know it's not very inspiring, but to me, it's very practical. So, yes, I see people mentioning the Helix Line 6. Yeah, it's got a good reputation, and that amp, I'm telling you, like I love playing on it. I think it is a wonderful piece of technology. I'm a person who does not buy pedals, and I bought that pedal. Okay, that should tell you enough. So as far as a pedal manufacturing company, I can't give any specifics on that. I can only give you, my direct kind of interpretation to that. Now, Chase is asking a great question, and Chase, I'm going to ask you to ask me again because I'm confused by it, and I love where you're going with it. Basically, Chase is saying, last time you showed me how modes and keys can be ambiguous until the song reveals what they are. True. Now I am wondering the reverse. If we are in a particular key, are there certain tricks that definitively change that key and mode, and other tricks that don't? So I don't exactly know what you mean. And I just want to mention here, secondary dominance, Neapolitan 6 chords. So these are chords that we will be discussing in my book as well. The Neapolitan chords, the augmented 6 chords as well. All those kind of chords. I forgot to mention that in my little rant about it. Every kind of chord, even like the like the Neapolitan 6 chord isn't like a chord shape. It's like a conceptual chord. So we'll discuss all that stuff in my book as well. But anyways, Chase, I don't know what you mean by this. You're asking, if I use a secondary dominant Neapolitan 6, neighboring tones, would it make sense that I am using tricks that are not in the same as modulating or borrowing a mode? Here's what I would say. I think here's the key point. Definitively change that key. What do you mean by that? Because in my opinion, it's a very rare thing to have a definitive key. I mean, even something that might seem definitive, like, E major to A major, could be, that might seem like, the key of E major, and I'm going 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, right? But what if A was my tonic, right? Then I'm actually playing 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. Right? So just the simple E major to A major chord progression is not a definitive key. So what I'm trying to say is I think this question might be on the wrong track because it's very rare that we have a definitive key. To me, say a definitive key change means like, hey, look, we have all of a sudden seen all 7 notes of this major scale. And let's face it, it's pretty rare to immediately see all 7 notes of a new major scale, right? Usually the 7 notes of a new key are spread out. And maybe sometimes a note doesn't even appear. Maybe you're in the key of A, but you never even see the 7th, right? That happens a lot, right? Or a song is just using a pentatonic scale. So I want you to think of key as looser, right? And then maybe when you think about that, then this question changes a little bit. Because all of these tricks, things like Neapolitan chords, things like secondary dominant chords, all these tricks could theoretically take us to a new key, but they could also just keep us in the same key. That's the great thing about secondary dominance is, secondary dominance could take you to a chord that is in your key, just temporarily. It feels like it's the tonic and then you move away. Or a secondary dominant could take you to a brand new key, and then all of a sudden that's your new key. Like, it works both ways. But what I'm trying to say is I don't know if there's often that many instances where we have definitive key changes. And I wouldn't really worry about a definitive key change. I guess there's certainly cases where it's pretty strong. But I'm a little confused by the question, Chase, and I apologize. I hate saying that. So if this doesn't clarify things, please ask me again. We'll answer it again next time, or I'll just answer you directly through email. You can just email me, signalsmusicjake@gmail.com, and I'm happy to clarify this a little bit more, okay? Now, Lusk Luther has some questions here. And 2 questions. Lusk Luther is in the chat as well. So Lusk is asking, what is the best way to use tensions and resolutions in perspective both melody and chords? In perspective of both melody and chords. So, Lusk, great question. I'm going to say it this way. I don't think that tensions and resolutions are something I want you to think about using. I don't want you to think of it as being like, oh, I am going to use the tension in this chord. I'm going to use, a resolution. I would want you to think of it more as, I want you to be aware that tensions exist. and I want you to be aware that resolution exists, okay? I think that's much better way to think about it, right? There is tension in a B7 chord, right? At least in my opinion there is, right? And especially if I start throwing in that note in there, what is there? That's the sharp 13, maybe? Oh no, it's the flat 6. The augmented 5. So we got like a 7 sharp 5 here, basically. There's tension here, right? Let's just listen to this. So if there's tension, what do we want to do with it? We could just stay on it and annoy people. That's totally fine. Like, what you do with the tension is your choice. I personally think there's a time to do that. There's a time to annoy people with tension. But most of the time, tension is meant to be resolved, right? To give us a sense of like, oh, finally. Thank God they gave me a tonic chord, finally, right? So to me, that is like something you want to be aware of. Oh, there was relief here. There was also relief there in E major, right? So I think it's just important to know, right? I think it's important to know that tensions and resolutions exist. How to use them? I mean, use them when you feel like it. Once you know that it's there, it's your choice to say, do I want to continue this tension, continue this tension, continue this tension, finally relieve that tension. That's a choice that you get to make as a composer, Lusk. Now, the other question is very, very good here. What does it mean when somebody says a particular note in a chord resolves to another chord? For example, the chord 16ths to the 13ths to 11ths. In my opinion, it's very hard to follow people when they talk about this audibly. I am a musician. I think I'm a good musician. But when people say, as the 11th descends down a half step to match the third of the underlying tonic chord, like, I'm immediately lost. I have no idea what you just said. I'd have to like stop, slow down, think. So let's try to go slow here. What does it mean when somebody says a note in a chord resolves to another chord? Well, I'm going to say something right now. I'm going to say here is a C major 7 sharp 11. I just said it. Now you can stop and think about it, all right? C major 7. Just C, E, G, B. What is a sharp 11? That's the same thing as a sharped 4th. It's basically a tritone, but we've lifted it up an octave higher. This is a dissonant chord. In my opinion, Lusk, this has tension. Right? Tension chord. Ooh. Now, let's say, what do we want to do with this very tense note? I think this is the most tense note, the F sharp. Where could it go? Well, it could resolve, and most resolution, this is important, Lusk, most resolution happens stepwise. It moves a half step one way, it moves a half step another way, or it moves a whole step one way, or it moves a whole step another way. More rarely, it moves a minor third up. You know, it's these small little stepwise motions is mostly how resolution occurs. So this is an F sharp up here. You see this F sharp? Where do we want to resolve it? I want to resolve it a half step higher to G. How do I want to do that? Well, let's just bring it up to G and let's think about a chord that could accommodate a G note, like an E minor chord. Ooh, right? Now what I'm going to say is I can say, the sharp 11 in my C major sharp 11 is resolving to the minor third in my E minor chord. I can talk like that and be very confusing if I want to be, right? Because what is the minor third in my E minor chord? Well, the minor third is G. So what's the movement here is F sharp to G, right? That's what we're creating here. C major 7, sharp 11, to E minor. Beautiful resolution, right? We could also resolve it down a whole step to the tonic of E. So now I can say, the sharp 11 is descending downward stepwise to the tonic of the minor tonic, the root of my minor tonic. So that's all that's happening, and this is where voice leading comes in helpful. If you look at one note and see where it's moving, you can say, I could move this 9th to the 3rd of the next chord. I could move this 9th down to the 5th of the next chord. You know, am I always thinking about stuff like that? No. Am I sometimes thinking about stuff like that? Yes, especially when it matters. And it matters a lot with fingerstyle, and it matters a lot with voice leading, choir, and a cappella and stuff like that. So great questions, Lusk. Really, really like the questions. I hope that those answer it. And that concludes all of the questions I was asked from Patreon. Every time I expect to have all this free time left over, and it ends up being an hour even. But you know what? We got plenty of time. Signal's late night. If you've got any questions here in the chat, you are encouraged to ask them now or re-ask them now. And in the meantime, I will take a sip of water. And I will begin playing a meditation on an E major 7 chord as I await the questions to come in. Our next question comes from Michael Varney. Michael asks, what do you think of the whole idea of tuning a guitar in fourths all the way down in order to aid in improvisation? What? I've never heard of that one, Michael Varney. Tuning the entire guitar in fourths all the way down? I have never heard of that idea before in my life, Michael Varney. If you would like to provide me some link or something to where you've heard it, I'm intrigued. It sounds like a really bad idea, but I'm intrigued because it's like, what did somebody discover that I don't know about? Yeah, Richard says that wouldn't help me improvise as well. Yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah, Michael Varney says YouTuber does this, makes a case. Yeah, I'm skeptical, but I'm still curious. I'd still like to learn. I could be wrong. All right, Lusk is saying, why so many types of tensions when we can simplify, when we can simply use a common dominant chord? Because they're different colors, Lusk. Like I said, I mean, listen to this B7 to E major. All right, we're in our E major already. I might as well stay there. Here's B7 to E major. Now, let's listen to B7. But we're going to take that F sharp, which of course is the 5th, and we're going to make it a sharped 5th instead. To me, let's listen to this change of B7 sharp 5. And now we'll resolve it to E major. All right. That's a cool change. Before we just had B7 to E. How does that make you feel, Lusk? Let's compare it. B7 to E major. Now let's listen to B7 sharp 5. How does it feel different to you? To me, it's way ritzier. It's way more old-timey, right? Like, way more, like, hokier. So sometimes you want that tension, that different flavor, that different feeling. That's the cool thing about the chords, you know? That's all the different kinds of chords. All those different, you know, variations are going to give you little subtle variations of the same thing. This is still a 5-to-1 cadence. We still went 5-1. 5. But we did it in a weirder way. 5-1. Right? Little subtle variation. I think that's important. That's why I like learning all those, Lusk. I think that they're just like different variations of the same kind of thing. You know what I mean? Nicholas, so fingerstyle, any tips on learning that? Any particularly how to improvise with fingerstyle? Great question, Nicholas. I don't get that a lot. I think it's really fun to improvise with fingerstyle, but I think there's two things I like to do. Just take basic chords and just pick through them, you know, A minor. Just finding chord shapes that are comfortable. Obviously, I'm just doing an Andalusian cadence. Just like you would with a pick, you know, kind of picking through chords, but you're getting a little bit more, you know, cool stuff because you're finger picking. The thing I want you to think about, though, Nicholas, is to just drone a bass note. I think this is the most important thing. This is what I was just doing. Drone a bass note. Here's E. And now let's play the E major scale. However you want to play the E major scale. This is beautiful, right? So it's great practice. You know, try doing every quarter note. So you're playing with your thumb. Now try eighth note. So your thumb has to play every other note. Try triplets. Try a 16th. Switch the bass note. Right, so I'm just switching the bass note because I know E, A. That would imply a 4 chord, right? If I'm in E major. And what would imply a 5 chord? Well, now, yeah, but I can't. I'd have to change my scale position. So that's fun, you know, and that's how I recommend it. Also, remember the dotted note, so... Or... Fun stuff. I love fingerstyle. When I sit and play my guitar, just so you all know, when I just sit and play, that's what I do. I usually pick up an acoustic guitar, no pick, and I just play stuff like that. I just play notes and chords, and I'll try, like, it's just fun. You just get to experiment with things, and it's like you have your own bass player right there that's like, oh, let's try this note. Oh, let's try that note. I imagine it's what piano players feel like, but they probably have more, you know, they have a lot more freedom than I do because, you know, that instrument is a lot more, well, a lot more possibilities on the piano. Either way, I hope that answers that question, Nicholas. Thomas is asking, you asked about you talked about 90s alt rock, leaning on that parallelism tone of rock concept. Do any Stone Temple Pilot songs come to mind? Thomas, that's a great question. I'm going to need to, oh boy, I don't know. Oh, gosh, I'm having a complete lapse in my ability to bring Stone Temple Pilot songs up in my head. Maybe that was not... The band I wanted to use was Silverchair. I think that's the right band. I also wanted to use, you know, Green Day does that kind of stuff all the time. You know, Nirvana also, you know, I mean, it's pretty... Well, I don't know if Nirvana did that much of it. I can say it's 90s, though. And I know that, you know... what's the other song I'm thinking of is... I want to get away. You get the idea, right? I want to get away. I want to fly away. Lenny Kravitz, right? Same era, I think. Same kind of stuff. So, I don't know, Nicholas. I don't think, or I'm sorry, was it Nicholas? No, it was Thomas. Thomas, I don't think I can name one off the top of my head. I'm sorry. The one I do know for sure, 7 Mary 3 Cumbersome. That's the song that comes to mind. And I'm sure if you look that up on YouTube, 7 Mary 3 Cumbersome, I bet the YouTube algorithm is going to think like, oh, you're a millennial and you're going down some nostalgia rabbit hole of 90s songs. So they're probably going to start feeding you more 90s songs and you'll probably hear a lot more of that same exact chord progression. So I believe. So. All right, let's see here. Have I missed anything else? D says, remember you are telling a story using notes rather than words. Minor, major, augmented, diminished, etc. Make up the vocabulary with which you generate an emotional response from the listeners. Absolutely. I agree 100%. STP were masters of interesting chords. Yeah, they were another great band that, you know, their alternative music made it into the mainstream, and it wasn't just completely bland. Creed, too. Listen to Creed songs. Creed has a lot of that stuff going on in it as well. And I'm pretty sure the one that you're mentioning there, 13 Flaws, Plush, definitely doesn't do it. I'm pretty sure Plush is a little more complex than that. Maybe STP was the wrong band to mention. So, all right, folks. Well, I think that might conclude things here for this evening. If we don't have any future questions, and I don't see any here, so if one pops up here in the immediate future, I will answer it. But in lieu of that happening, what I think I'll do is just continue my good night music. PDF Darkside, or PF Darkside, is asking, is that desk to my right the main stage for my Signals videos? It is in fact my video editing computer. That computer over there handles the streaming right now. That's the one where all the streaming data is going to. That's the one that's actually streaming to YouTube. Everything you're seeing over here is a completely different computer. And the reason I did things this way, I know it's very complex. I know it was stupidly expensive but it was a spare computer anyway, so I didn't like buy an extra computer just for that. The reason I do that is because if you do it all on one computer, you're going to have latency, all right? And I didn't want latency. So my only real option, like I wouldn't be able to do this, like, you know, play through my DAW. That's what I wanted to do, was play through my DAW. And not have to worry about any sort of delay. So, I hope you've all enjoyed tonight's live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. If it wasn't for you, this live stream wouldn't exist. So, thank you. Have a great night. We are going to do this again soon. Namaste.